In the previous Dharma talk, Shifu introduced the 5 skandhas. They are form, feeling, conception, volition, and consciousness. What are the 5 skandhas? There are 5 aggregates. It is a system to help us understand ourselves. Form refers to the body, the physical part of what we are. And the other 4 refers to the mental part of what we are. And skandhas means aggregate. Aggregate, a collection, a heap of things. So that immediately means that these aspects of who we are is not a unified, independent, single entity. The body is not a single entity. So let's think about this. Our body, this body form, why don't we just call it body? Why do we call it form? Well, because calling it form will give us insight into the nature of this thing, forms. So forms are not rigid. And the body indeed go through many different forms. When we were a fetus inside our mother's wombs, and when we are born as a baby, and now we have grown up, our forms have changed considerably. And the form is an aggregate. The form skandha is an aggregate. So you do notice that the different parts of our body change as well. Now, the different parts of our body work together to make our body work the way it does. But does it always work? No. Some parts can fail, maybe fail slightly, or maybe fail seriously. We have all experienced that. It's what we call sickness. We get sick when some part of our body doesn't work well. And why doesn't it work well? Why does some part of our body does not work as we hope or expected? Well, we know because certain conditions have changed. Certain factors have changed. You catch a flu, and that means some external virus has gone into your body and then is wreaking havoc. Is making trouble inside your body, causing you to feel uncomfortable, causing your organs to work extra hard or not work as well, right? So these conditions, they come together and they cause you to feel sick. And then maybe, hopefully after a few days, you feel well again. That conditions have again changed. So any part of our body is subject to changing conditions. These conditions can come from outside, externally, or these conditions can come from inside. For example, you eat some food that is rotten, and then so you get food poisoning, you get diarrhea. So then conditions change in your gut, and then in your stomach, your intestine, and so on, and then you don't feel well. But then once you get rid of those bad conditions, ingredients, things inside, you feel well again. right? You play sports and you fall, you bleed a little bit, and the blood clots form on your knee to stop the blood, and then it maybe gets swollen and so on. So a couple of days later, a few days later, you are well again, and that your skin looks new. So all the different parts, all the different aggregates that is part of your form, your body, are subject to changing conditions. And so as a result, your body is constantly changing. It is impermanent. Now let us think about it. Is what we call the body a fixed thing? It's not a fixed thing. Does outside matter, outside form, become integrated into your body? Well, it does, right? Whenever you eat, whenever you drink something, those outside forms goes into this form aggregate, the form skandha, and then after so many hours, some of it gets integrated and become part of this form that you call the body. And some old forms, some old matter in your body gets out to no longer become part of your body. So from this, we see that this form that we call the body, now the body, the word, the term body, make it seem like it is an entity, a single entity, but it is not. That's a misconception. There's something wrong with our conception, our idea of what the body is like. Now, by think of it as form aggregate, and that this form actually gets mixed with external forms, outside matter, all the time. So outside matter comes into this form aggregate, and then things get mixed up. Some things get out again, some form get out again, some form get stay, but they don't stay forever. Cells die and they get expelled. When you sleep at night, your body goes into repair mode and then take out some of the dead cells and unwanted material, unwanted form, and expel it when you go to the restroom when you wake up in the morning. So this process is taking place all the time. So we see that from the form aggregate perspective, the body is not an entity. It is impermanent. It is interdependent to outside forms, outside matter. And because of that, you don't have complete control. You have incomplete control of this body. Even though you call it your body, you can only affect, influence how this body works to some extent. And they are outside factors, outside conditions that affect your body at the same time, all the time, that you don't have much control of. That is a better understanding of the nature of this thing, this form aggregate, isn't it? Now, what are the implications when we see our body this way through the perspective of form aggregate, the form skandha? What are the implications? Well, Shifu will leave that to you to reflect upon. And now look at our mind. Our mind is complicated, but now we have a way to examine our mind through the feeling conception, volition, and consciousness. Through this system of 4 skandhas, we can get a better understanding of our mind, what it is, how it works. And we can get a better understanding of what our mind is not, and get a better understanding of how sometimes our mind functions in a poor way, in a bad way, so that we mislead ourselves. For example, when somebody says something to you and you get angry because of that. Now, anger is a feeling, right? It's a strong feeling. You get angry. Oh, I'm so mad at that person. What happens? If we look at it, what is happening from the 5 skandhas perspective? Okay, anger is a feeling. Is that anger me? Am I angry? When I say I am angry, what happens is that we identify I with that anger. What happens is that that anger becomes me, becomes I. I'm angry. And that is the reality. But is that really the reality? Well, let's see. Anger is a feeling. I am feeling that anger. Yeah. But feeling is that particular feeling of anger is part of an aggregate. It's a part of a whole heap of feelings that I may have. So at this moment, that anger feeling dominates. But I am much more than just that feeling of anger, isn't it? Because there's 5 aggregates, 5 skandhas, this whole huge collection of form, feeling, conception, and consciousness. Now, when I'm so focused on I am angry, that one single feeling dominates our being, and then the other faculties, other functions of mind goes into the background. And as a result, we may follow up that feeling with some ideas, some volition, some action, some thoughts that may not be best for us. We may say things that we regret later. We may do things that cause more harm to ourselves and the other person, because we are letting that one feeling dominate and not let the other functions of mind, for example, rational judgment, analysis of cause and effect. What is going to happen if I continue acting like this for what's going to happen to me tomorrow, a week later, a year from now? Will I be sorry for what I did and what I said a year from now if I continue on this path, letting that one feeling dominate? Remember the skandhas, the aggregates. Now, is it possible to switch out that feeling and switch in some other feeling, or switch out that idea and switch in some other idea? Yes, you can. And many people do. Many people stop, reflect, and say, wait a minute, let me pause for a moment, switching some other ideas. Let me pause and listen to what that person is saying, and maybe give that person a chance to explain What is that person actually trying to express? And then how does that actually apply to me or doesn't apply to me? So if we're switching some other faculty, some other ability of the mind to function, then maybe we get a better reaction and we may have a better result. That's also who I am, right? I can do that, right? So I am angry. That is dangerous. We're letting one small aspect of our mind becoming the whole person. We make the mistake of thinking, I am that anger. That anger is me. I have to feel angry. I have to act this way. That is my personality. Well, what is your personality? Your personality is an aggregate of feelings, conception, volition, and consciousness. That's your personality. But do these things change? Do your ideas about people and things change? Do how you feel about a situation change? Can it change? Yes. When you were little and when you were older, have you changed how you feel and perceive certain people or certain things? You certainly have. So the five skandhas are all impermanent and they are all interdependent. They all can change due to internal and external factors. External factors, for example, you used to get really angry when somebody says you're stupid, for example. But you make some friends, and then one friend doesn't get angry when somebody says mean things to him or her. And you wonder, why is that? Hey, my friend, why don't you get angry? That person was saying some really mean things to you. And that person explained to you, well, why should I feel angry? What he says is not necessarily true. I am who I am. I do what I do. He doesn't understand me 100%. And you think about it and say, well, okay, that's an interesting way of looking at things. Next time somebody says something I don't like, maybe I can do what he does. I can react in the way that he does. All right. So you begin to change, you begin to grow, you begin to notice different conditions, you switch in different feelings and conception at that situation. And then you find out, oh, I'm not suffering as much anymore. Yeah. So the five skandhas perspective shows that you can change. You are impermanent. You are interdependent. You don't have complete control, but that's okay. But that's okay. You control what you can control. You let go of what you cannot control. You know that I, whatever I is, are constantly interacting with the external world. I take into the perspective and that I is not a fixed thing. I don't have to react or feel this way. I can change how I feel because that feeling is not me. That is part of the aggregate of how my mind feels. This way, you begin to have a fuller picture of what I am. You begin to break some limitations that you have placed upon yourself about who you are and what you must do. You begin to open up to an I with a lot of possibilities. Okay? And that has a direct consequences on the suffering in our life or the unhappiness in our life. We are unhappy or we suffer, Buddha explains, because we have a very fixated idea of who I am, what I must do, how I must feel. When we have a better idea of, oh, I is a complicated aggregate of feeling, conception, volition, and forms, and so on, I have more possibilities. I don't have to limit myself to feel and see things in a certain way. I can grow, I can change, I can be wiser. And so the suffering is not so real anymore. I used to suffer because I used to feel this way and see things this way. But now if I see things in a different way, then my feeling changes and maybe I don't suffer anymore. So think about this. This is powerful. This is really powerful. A better understanding of ourselves, of who I am, what I am, can actually alleviate suffering. Even though we may be in the same situation twice. First time I suffer, second time I don't have to suffer. That is called the emptiness of suffering. And it comes from the power of understanding that I am empty. I can change. I don't have to be fixed this way. Okay, so deeply immersed in Prajna Paramita, clearly perceived the emptiness of the five skandhas and transcended our suffering. Now we have some hint about how, by properly understanding I, or the five skandhas, I can have a way to deal with our suffering. Okay? Now let us review what we learned today. Let's do a mental review. What are the five skandhas? Why is it a useful system to help us understand ourselves? What does it mean that the body is a form aggregate? And how does that relate to the teaching of impermanence, interdependence, and incomplete control? Now, what does it mean, the feeling, our feelings is part of an aggregate, is an aggregate of feelings? What does it mean that I am not this feeling? And how is that liberating? How does that help me? How does that help me get out of that negative feelings? And can we look at feeling, conception, volition, and consciousness as not fixed set of what I am or my personality, but rather a dynamic, changing, interdependent aggregate, just like the body? How does that open up possibilities of who I am or what I can become? Okay, let us reflect on this teaching of five skandhas and see what other insights you can get about the nature of who you are.